This is the Vincast, Australia's #1 wine podcast, hosted by myself, James Garesbrook, also known as the Intrepid Wino. If you're a regular listener of the podcast, you would know that every episode I ask you to leave a rating and a review on the iTunes page for the podcast because it's great feedback for me. I can find out who you might want to have on the show, that you might want to listen to their story. But also, it's really fantastic for exposing more people to the podcast who might be interested in wine, might not realize that there is a wine podcast. So please do go to the iTunes page for the Vincast, hit that 5-star rating, and leave me a short review. It should only take you about 5 or 10 minutes at most. Please, you'd be doing me a massive favor. And also, all the people who have been on the podcast already, it's great for them to hear that you are enjoying the show. So thanks very much, and I hope you enjoy this week's episode. On episode 94 of the Vincast, I chat with Lance Redgwell, the vintner behind cult New Zealand winery Cambridge Road in Martinborough. Hello there, Vincasters, and welcome to another episode of the Vincast. My name is James Garesbrook, otherwise known as the Intrepid Wino, and I hope you enjoyed last week's slightly late episode of the podcast with Ben Haynes. It was great to finally sit down with him, and I actually look forward to catching up with him when I visit Mount Langi in July, and I'll be tasting a range of wines, so I'll be sure to share my tasting notes when I do that. I had just got back from my weekend away in Tasmania, and it was great to catch up with a number of friends and colleagues and meet some new ones as well. So I look forward to sharing my experiences there. But for this week, I actually sat down with Lance Redgwell from Cambridge Road Wines in Martinborough, New Zealand. Lance was here with his importer, Vineyard. And I actually got the opportunity to also attend a wonderful wine dinner at Host Brunswick that evening. So I really enjoyed my chat with Lance, talking about organic biodynamic and wines that are, as he says, alive. So I hope you enjoy this week's episode. Stick around to the end so you can find out how to get in touch with Lance and myself. But until then, I'll see you on the other side. Lance, thank you very much for making some time whilst you're here in Melbourne and Australia, I guess, to be on the podcast. And I'd like to officially welcome you as, I think, my first New Zealand winemaker on the Vincast. So welcome.
Thanks, mate. It's good to be here.
I start every episode of the podcast by asking my guest if they can remember the time that they interacted with wine that had a slightly more profound influence on them. If there was such an event, or if it was more an osmosis, gradual kind of seeping into the bones that made you want to follow a career in wine.
Yeah, I guess the foundation of where the desire or the seed to grow wine came from actually goes back to probably memories of my grandmother's garden and her kitchen and her tomatoes and her basil and her pesto and her love of Italian lifestyle. She was a farmer and I grew up there, but there's no roots to the vineyards back home in New Zealand where we came from. But just that desire to grow good, delicious produce and share it with people with love and passion led me down the path towards wine. I've been rolling with it ever since, I guess.
Whereabouts did you grow up?
So I grew up on the sort of volcanic country fringe of Auckland City.
Right.
Rich basaltic earth, more renowned for growing vegetables than grapevines.
Yeah.
You'll find a few olive groves there nowadays, but a challenging climate, a lot more rain and humidity than where I'm currently based down at the lower end of that island.
Is there any possibility for viticulture in that area?
Oh, for sure, if you're passionate and willing to work hard like most of us do. As you head a little bit east, you find some rain shadow. You're into clay earth, maritime influence, Cabernet Franc, Merlot country.
Right, okay.
Chardonnay, the ever-adaptable grape, seems to work around there. And
is there quite a bit of volcanic soil throughout New Zealand?
North Island based is
Yeah.
where the volcanic activity is.
Because as soon as I heard volcanic, I thought, ooh, Nerella muscalese.
Yeah, I'm not sure about heat units and that sort of thing for emulation of real Italy. But the first guy I ever worked for was an Italian guy,
Right.
and certainly gave me some exposure to things like Barbera, Corvina, Nebbiolo, playing around with Amarone styles and dried grape method.
Okay. So there are some Italian grapes growing in New Zealand?
Oh, it's sadly a really rare occasion.
Yeah.
There's only one or two producers that are committed to that
Okay.
that path, and I'm hoping to become one of them as time progresses. We'll find some space to put some a little bit more.
Listeners of the podcast would know that, I have a real love affair with Italian wine and Italian grape varieties, partly because my day job is selling Italian wine. But, I'm really interested in how Italian grape varieties can translate Australian terroir. And I'd be really fascinated to sort of see, how, because I think possibly people's perception of Italian or Italy and subsequently Italian varieties is that, they come from a warm climate, but most of the time they don't, and I would think that there'd be a lot of Italian varieties, northern Italian varieties, which probably would be ideal for New Zealand climate.
Yeah, I think you're not wrong at all.
Yeah.
Certainly, I feel more Italian when I sort of make my wines than sort of classically French, I suppose. One
good.
would hope I felt like a
That's
Kiwi
good to hear.
through and through, though.
But your grandmother was Italian?
No, surprisingly, no, she wasn't. We're like fifth generation Kiwis of sort of
okay.
Irish English stock.
But she made pesto.
Yeah, I know. She's a good woman, and she's never travelled to Italy.
Wow.
But yeah, surprising where those little gems of inspiration come from.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly the future lies with more other European varieties.
Yeah.
As we continue to roll forward and evolve as a nation of wine producers.
So when did you kind of get interested in wine?
Kinda around 18, 20. I was at university and
What were you studying?
started with business and commerce and
Okay.
marketing and PR and stuff like that. And
Fun stuff.
not really at all. Halfway through that degree, picked up some papers in viticulture science and wine science, and never looked back really.
So was the interest like just drinking it, or did you kind of
No,
find stuff?
I didn't really have a huge interest in wine at the time. It did stem all from a love of food and the art of sharing at the table.
Right.
Just celebration of the harvest and produce in general. Yeah, I like beer. Yeah, I like booze. I like booze of all kinds.
Yeah,
but wine, ties together so much of what I love as a human. And sort of the skill bases I had from the desire to grow things, to work the earth organically, and as I sort of alluded to earlier, to just share great produce with people, preserve it simply, share it honestly, with good times and good people. So wine fitted all of those formulas and allowed me to overlay the sort of artistic, creative side of adorning things beautifully and sharing a vision, creating a brand, that kind of thing. All the challenges that go with that, and certainly the layers of complexity that underlie running your own business and that sort of thing, which is the least favourable part of it. But do our best.
But also necessary.
Yeah, unfortunately so.
So you studied a bit of viticulture and winemaking?
Yeah, I'm pretty casually trained, so it was just correspondence papers. I just added them to my curriculum at the time. And
Is there a particular place to study viticulture and winemaking, or can you do it in a number of places?
I'm a firm believer that the best way to study viticulture is on the land, and from great producers and mentors, and as much as just picking up knowledge from wherever we can.
Learn by doing.
It's great to have some fundamental skill base. the thing was when we were studying, trying to learn organic agricultural techniques that applied specifically to viticulture, was the knowledge was like hen's teeth. It was really, really hard to find, with the exception of a few journal articles I could find written by James Milton. He's sort of like our organic godfather. So early Demeter certified back in the 80s, Gisborne, East Coast New Zealand, working in really humid and challenging viticultural conditions, delivering consistently kick-ass wines, and continues to do so to this day. And really the threads of knowledge came through from him, and then you had to look to a more global example and understand the art of biodynamics. And there's a great college in Hawke's Bay called Taruna College that does our national qualifications in biodynamic agriculture. When I went through the program back in 2003, it was a broad agricultural study. 9 months of committed sort of learning from great organic farmers.
Right.
Short modules, really interesting stuff. Sectors on water, the physics of water movement, time, how to farm forests and tree crops, and animals. I mean, they're all so interrelated, and it all does start with the soil. But we had a good time.
Is that pretty common as far as like when you're looking at organic and biodynamic agriculture, that you are? It's important to understand how all kind of crops and plants might work in that kind of ecosystem, whereas in more commercial farming kind of understanding, you think of it as one crop. So it's like, well, I'm going to learn how to grow wheat, or I'm going to learn how to grow grapes, and that sort of really doesn't help as far as like particularly biodiversity.
Yeah, I think you said it right there for sure. Like monoculture's the vacuum in which disease exists.
Yeah. So even studying, biodynamic or organic viticulture, you're taught to understand, well, here's how this affects all different kinds of plants.
Yeah, I think you can adapt all of that knowledge. I mean, it's a simple farming practice, really, and it is all about having a living ecosystem. You know? Diversity is key. Holistic farm management is great as much as you can pursue it. We're constrained currently to just a little 6-acre parcel of land surrounded by other vineyards. One of my neighbours on the eastern side's Atarangi Vineyard, who are pretty renowned for what they do, and Clive, the founder there, he's big into his biodiversity, so he's got quite a lot of native pathways through the blocks, for insects and bird life, etc. And I've recently fully converted over to the organic management programs too, which is great to have on my doorstep. But with 6 acres, I mean, I don't have that much space for livestock. I don't have that much place for forestry. But we're doing our best to bring it into play. We sort of have some chickens and some ducks and a little bit of tree planting and things going on. But yeah, I mean, managing your undivine story, the way that you look after your soil is key. Thriving biology directed at a positive sort of outcome is all we can do, and hope to harness the taste of the earth and the vines, which is of course every decent wine grower's objective.
Did your interest in sustainable practices that come fairly early on? How did you kind of get interested in that aspect of wine?
Sustainable practices?
Yeah, like organic, biodynamic, that kind
of thing. Again, when I first graduated, I went and did some work with a couple of vineyards in the challenging environment of Auckland, and got inducted into the program of traditional wine growing at that point in time. And, I could see that working with carcinogenic products is not something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life, especially knowing the very true fact that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and that I would be raising a family on the land, and that children, and they should be able to run through your vineyard and rub their faces and the grapes and eat them and just be kids and create a living, thriving, healthy environment. I'm not in this. I mean, wine to me is part of a balanced lifestyle and part of a beautiful life. It shouldn't be something that harms us. It should be something that we embrace and endure and enriches us.
Is it the same situation in New Zealand where like a lot of social problems are unfairly blamed on alcohol, and wine kind of gets lumped in? And that's certainly a problem in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, I just came through from Sydney. It's a shame what's happening over there in terms of the ability to enjoy, adult life. It's slow. I think we're a few steps further behind, and I think wine still, thankfully, is not necessarily part of that collective understanding or feeling.
I mean, it represents such an important part of the New Zealand economy, wine production and wine tourism.
Yeah, it does. It does, and we don't have. We wine's not dirt cheap in New Zealand as well, so it's still sort of chosen as a slightly more educated choice.
Cultural,
perhaps. I don't know, but.
Can you tell me a little bit about your early career path in the wine industry?
Sure, yeah. In a nutshell, I started on the volcanic clays of South Auckland, southeast Auckland, overlooking sort of the island of Waiheke and out the Coromandel Peninsula. So turf in which I grew up, beautiful exposure to the culinary world there and into making limoncello and olives production and, just the greater lifestyle. Channeled through viticultural management, vineyard managing, did a little bit of sales, repping work as well.
Okay.
Not really deeply into winemaking at this point other than being a cellar rat. And then migrated a bit further south after a few years there to go and explore perhaps the more established commercial areas of New Zealand wine production down the east coast through the South Island, etc. Passing through, connected with James Milton, who recommended the Taruna College course in the Bay, Hawke's Bay. So that's good territory. Lived on the coast there for a while, around a place called Clairview Estate, down the South Island, doing a lot of turf kicking. Viticulture is really my forte. So dusty roads, looking for unexplored sites and viticultural potential. That's what kind of drives me.
Is there still a lot of that in New Zealand?
Untapped potential?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some beautiful geology and overlaid with great climatic bands. But, it's an expensive game planting these vineyards. And it's a timely game too.
Yeah.
And it's a bloody committed game. It's not the kind of thing you sort of step into for a few years and move on from.
No.
It's a lifetime choice to establish a block, especially in an area that's undiscovered, unestablished. It's going to take a lifetime to generate a following and understanding when you're pioneering any site like that. And sometimes it's a fucking lonely game as well. You need that family that's willing to live in the middle of nowhere on this bloody great hillside that sits on limestone or slate or whatever it might be. You
hope that they can have some appreciation that you do for
important
places.
And is happy. Well, I mean, there's places I've found that I've chosen that I know the commitment level is more than I can fathom at this point, with family commitments and things like that. So,
slightly more isolated spots?
There's certainly some amazingly beautiful pieces of terroir that are yet to be really fully explored.
Where you are in sort of that Martinborough, Hawke's Bay area, is that reasonably populated?
No, not really. A few little clusters around the core. I mean, Hawke's Bay is a bigger example. We don't do a lot of work there. I lived there for a little while.
Yeah.
I'm considering working with some fruit from that territory.
Okay.
Between that land, there's a beautiful area that speaks of Cabernet Franc and Chenin Blanc and some great things that no one's really doing much with at this point. Where we are in the Martinborough, it's a tiny little village really, and there's quite a lot of beautiful diversity as you explore the valley further. But again, it's a capital intensive game, and something that you have to be pretty patient to slowly evolve the business. I think.
Is Martinborough one of the more expensive places to to be, establishing a vineyard?
Yes and no. On a per acre basis, if you want to be on the heart of the terrace, then land prices aren't cheap. They are generally established sites. On the fringes, it's more affordable, and the viticultural potential on the fringes it's great if you know where to look. Um, but the nice thing about Martinborough is the scale of agriculture is really petite. It's quite intimate. So lots of blocks of my scale, 6 to 10 acres. There's even 2.5 acre parcels and things like that. So while the per acre price is not cheap, for $500,000 you can get yourself a producing vineyard and you can start a label or something. Well, if you're lucky, you can do it for half that price, depending on the scale at which you want to roll. So it's not hideously expensive either. We're not buying, 100-acre parcels of producing Marlborough vineyards or something ridiculous like that. So it's nice. So a lot of people choose to go there and follow their passion.
Yeah.
And nowadays we've got more and more younger, passionate people coming in. So like second or third generation, picking up established old blocks, which are heading to the market as 30-year-old parcels and things.
Yeah.
Which is great opportunity for fun and interesting things to evolve. And close to Wellington, we see a whole bunch of cool people coming up and get to share our wines with them on a regular basis, which is a nice part of the business.
James Halliday is undoubtedly Australia's foremost authority on Australian wine. He established Wine Companion as an annual guide to the wines of Australia, giving tasting notes and ratings of Australian wines. That evolved into a regular magazine, a wine magazine called Wine Companion, which also has an online presence. And Halliday is actually a fantastic way to find out what's happening in the world of wine. But the online element is a great resource if you'd like to just find out basic details about a winery and what the best wineries of a particular region might be. If you're thinking about visiting, which I highly recommend you do, get out to the wine regions, visit some wineries. So if you are a listener of the podcast, Wine Companion and Halliday have offered a fantastic offer. Simply enter the code Intrepid30, one word, when you purchase any subscription package, and they will give you an amazing 30% discount. What an amazing saving. Thank you very much, Wine Companion and Mr. Halliday, for your support of this podcast. Thank you guys for listening, and please do check out winecompanion.com.au. In those years when you were, as you say, sort of kicking dirt and cellar ratting and stuff like that, did you already have the intention of establishing something for yourself?
Yeah, right from day one, I think. A very clear vision that I always wanted to kick off my own label, and that would be small and manageable, and that I'd own it, hopefully, control it, you know what I mean? It wouldn't own me. And that we would do great things that we sort of add value to and that we're passionate about, that we love. So with that in mind, I only ever really worked for smaller family-owned firms that were passionate about what they did, and the caliber of what they did was excellent. And that's the level of care that I've sort of tried to take to the entire formula of the way we do things. So yeah, I bashed around different parts of the industry. I spent a little bit of time in London at some point distributing some wines, wanting to get a feel for all facets of the industry.
Sure.
So that when you kick your own baby off, that you've got a decent level of understanding. Turns out you can never have enough knowledge, but we continue to learn as we go along.
Yeah.
And get better at what we do every year.
Yeah.
And still make occasional mistakes, but refine the formula over time, I suppose. But it's mainly about friendships.
Sure.
It's about channels and people and the good times you have.
How have you seen the New Zealand wine industry kind of evolve, particularly over like the last 10 or 15 years? Of course, there was huge investment in Marlborough when, Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc just sort of took over the world. Did other parts of New Zealand experience the same kind of, heavy investment?
Not to an extreme level, I don't think. Marlborough's a battleship of a beast of a thing, and it just keeps on rolling. Central Otago's experienced a huge amount of investment and growth over the last 20 years.
When they're saying that, some of the best Pinot Noir outside of Burgundy, it's going to happen.
Yeah, well, they're blessed with gorgeous landscape. Who doesn't want a little nest egg down in somewhere in the safe southern hemisphere? So a lot of offshore capital came in there.
When you say safe, do you mean like free of earthquakes?
No, I mean a lot of it was American capital and stuff, and
Yeah, okay.
I can't quote on the reasons why people choose to invest in hidden away little places, but certainly it's tucked up in the mountains there. It's got beautiful water resources, great snow, great landscapes, great tourism, great economy, and it continues to flourish and grow. I could be pretty happy down there, I suppose, but to be honest, once you own your own vineyard, well, I don't travel like I used to. It's been a decade since I visited Central Otago at least. I really want to get back down there because it's a pretty gifted climate, with the exception of maybe it's too dry and the soils are too lean, and that irrigation becomes a big part of your formula. Luckily, they have huge water resources. But and the best farmers, of course, farming biologically, are building organic matter into the soils over time and improving the land on which they farm. And that's what I really want to go and see, the differences between when I first visited there 15, 20 years ago and now, with the passionate following of, really biological farmers down there, just how thriving their lands really are now. And I admire, a good handful of the producers down there and the caliber of what they offer, for sure.
But would you say that, like, where the best or the most exciting part of New Zealand wine is in those smaller established farmers, essentially, who are growing the grapes and making their own wine? Like they're sort of the ones who have established the name of New Zealand wine, particularly in terms of premium wine. That, like, for example, in the US, which probably would be New Zealand's one of the most important markets, well, for wine in general, I guess. But New Zealand has a perception of they make premium, cool climate wines, and Australia doesn't. Do you think that's an important kind of core about what New Zealand wine is these small, really devoted producers?
I think in any country, that's where the gems lie.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, those are the wines I personally like to enjoy. It's nice to support people like that too. People that have the opportunity to make personal wines. And that's the other thing about farming on the scale that I do.
Yeah.
And when you embed so much of your own energy into everything from pruning your vines to, caressing them through the growing season, becoming, just interwoven with the nature of your land, so your instincts take over. Training doesn't matter at that point. It's how well you're connected and with the seasons and how well you observe things and when you can see stress and things and you can sort of step in and help things out. And when, it's nice to know that these little rows of vines over here are always first to bud burst in the spring, and therefore they're also the first to flower. Therefore, when it comes time to harvest, I know they're probably going to be my early crop. But I quite like the sector over here because it's just, it's got a little bit more vibrant acid in it. And in fact, we're going to pick both of those together and co-ferment them because we want that freshness, but, we don't want over-ripeness at this end. And just by working the land on a small scale, you have that level of connection with your site. So when it comes to your winemaking decisions and harvesting times and all of those kind of things, it becomes simple. I don't bother doing much in the way of field testing or anything anymore. When you feel, when it's right, a bit of taste, a bit of look, and just go with it.
Yeah. So you eventually decided to start your own thing. What were the important decisions that you made about starting up Cambridge Road?
Yeah, I had no intention of setting up in Martinborough because I thought it'd be priced out of my league. But due to the nature of the scale of things and fortuitous timing and just how things sometimes fall into place in life, there was an opportunity to get invested there. It wasn't the most beautiful vineyard in the world. It's not the most compelling if you study what is great viticultural potential globally, the Grand Cru sites, etc. I would never describe my vineyard as something of that comparable quality, but it does have certain charms,
Mm-hmm.
and it does fit kind of nicely into all I'm trying to do is just make a living, raise a family, and enough boxes were ticked in this example that we're close to achieving that goal.
Mm.
So how did we get there? I don't know. I could have been anywhere. I'd be very, very happy to be in some back block up in Waikari, hanging out next to the Pyramid Valley crew and stuff. The geology there's exceptional. The wine styles are great. There's further areas south, not central Otago, but sort of north Otago. The Waitaki Valley is worthy of mention. The viticultural potential there's awesome. The lifestyle potential is awesome. It's isolated though. You've got to be passionate. And to say that some of the turf closer to my hometown is would be nice too. Close to home, close to beaches you love. It's all about the bigger life. But yeah, we were lucky enough. Just completed my 10th vintage with Cambridge Road with my own label.
Yep.
Haven't lived there the whole time. Need to have a real job to pay the bills in the early years until we had a bit of wine to actually get serious about trying to sell. And we started off making pretty serious reds. We're planted to Pinot Noir and Syrah. The vineyard goes back to the mid-'80s. So fairly simple philosophy. It was just older vines in a New Zealand context of the word.
Yeah, of course.
Farm them cleanly, simply, make the wine as honestly, classically as possible, and deliver great wines. They're a couple of years to market in terms of the build phase. A good year in barrel, and I usually do a year in bottle before release on the premium lines. As time's evolved and gone on, we've continued to pursue lower use of sulfites and intervention along those lines. We've always had the biological farming. We've always been an unfined, unfiltered kind of fan. And now we're dropping out the use of new oak influence, and we're working towards things like bigger format, older wood. Just receiving another Sedgman egg this week. The ceramic work and the ovum formats are kind of nice, and something that excites me in terms of the kind of I'm really interested in trying to preserve the life energy of our produce and try and deliver that in bottle. The bioelectric energy that potentially we can grow as sensitive farmers, that all living things have. And with my intention is to try to make produce that's hypercharged, basically, that's just really buzzing with life. Mm-hmm. And as a winemaker to preserve that as honestly, as simply as possible, but with the most sensitive reflection of getting that into bottle without losing too much of that charge en route. Those are the sort of the hidden benefits of, to me anyway, that's the way I view biological biodynamic farming, is that ability to try and grow produce with that kind of that chi, that kind of inner energy, for sure.
When you purchased the vineyard, did you have to do many things to kind of bring the vineyard more in line with your vision about what you wanted it to be?
It's certainly kept me busy. I was lucky in that the vineyard had a long history of organic husbandry. So all we had to do was hit go on that. It was looking a bit tired. It needed some fresh energy. It was a 20-year-old when I picked it up. So we ploughed the earth, and we got biodynamic preps on the earth to inoculate the soil, and we put new cover crops in, more leguminous cover crops, some oats and things to build, just to enliven the soil. Thatched old grass, just grass down under the vines. The canopies were a little bit yellow and a little bit tired. So we came in, freshened things up, and it was like flicking a switch on. Within a year, the vineyard was thriving, and just vigorous and alive again. Beautiful deep greens and really good. And then looking at the block from a bigger perspective, there's looking at the Pinot Noir and Syrah we had as a farmer, as a winemaker. The intention was to slow the metabolism on the Pinot Noir to allow it to calmly bring itself to fruition over a longer period of time. But with the Syrah, we've taken steps in the other direction to advance its level of ripeness because of the climatic profile at which we exist. So historically, you'd harvest them a month apart. So, simple things, physical things like saving the water shoots off the bottom of the Syrah. Ours were all trained up at sort of waist-high fruiting heights, like a lot of modern New Zealand vineyards are, in terms of fruiting heights. So easily functional, etc., whatever, easy to farm. So we drop them right down, chop them off at the knees eventually over time, over years and years of saving water shoots and then spurring them and then laying new wood and then chopping the heads. And now we've got nice low fruiting wires on the Syrah, and we work agonisingly to work the earth underneath those so that we get that exposed earth. And in an organic program that involves finishing by hand if you have to. Luckily, I've only got like 1.5 acres of the stuff. We don't usually get through all 1.5 acres by hand with all the other things we have to do in the working year. But we get as much done as we can, and the intention there is to harness that earth heat, etc. But everyone knows the story of that. Pinot, we've taken it the other way. We've lifted fruiting heights higher. I want it right up there in the cooler air, further away from the earth, more blowing long grasses and things like that. And I'm really happy with and subtle adjustments, really looking at over 10 years at getting our sugars at harvest down, so shorter trimming heights on canopies. As we haven't really fertilised the site for 5 years or so with the intention of making these girls, the old girls, work hard to interpret the soil. I want my wine to truly taste of the minerals underfoot that are native to the site, and not following some bell curve of some laboratory that tells you need a bit more phosphorus in the soil or whatever that might be. We do the main input we bring in is the kelp inputs from the local coast, which finds its way into all our compost teas, things like that. Liquid extracts and stuff which go into every spray that we'll throw in the vineyard. So just nice, gentle kelp-based resources. That's the gentle foliar feeds that we bring into play, and tiny bits of compost get spread around from our mark waste, which we layer with a little bit of bits and pieces, a bit of straw, seaweed.
But the vineyard being 30 years old now, and you having established a relationship with it over the last 10 years, must be pretty exciting and rewarding to be getting it into a spot where you're really comfortable with it and producing wines. And I think it's probably, I'm excited myself to be this evening joining you guys for dinner and hopefully getting a chance to taste all the wines because it sounds really, really exciting. I'm really excited about some of the wines that I've been seeing from New Zealand, like that have been coming to the Australian market. I think it's really exciting to see that the discussion is changing a lot. People in Australia, I think, are really changing their perception about what New Zealand wine is. It's not just, Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc. There's a lot of other great regions outside of Marlborough, and even within Marlborough, there's some really exciting kind of sites and other varieties apart from Sauvignon Blanc. So, I know that you were in Sydney. I'm sure you probably got the opportunity to chat with lots of people, and they're probably excited to see the wines as well.
Yeah, we've been having a great time, and it's fun to be making some of these. We've sort of had our classical roots. Our attempts to emulate classicism, and then now we're starting to play around with far more experimental works.
Yeah, cool.
One of my favourite wines is Dovetail, which is a field blend. It's based on home vineyard, and it's blended in the ratios in which it grows, which is something that we feel really passionate about in terms of unique flavour profiles and the like.
Awesome. Well, look, I think we'll probably have to wrap up because you've got a very busy day ahead of you out in the Melbourne trade. So thank you for making some time to sit down with me. Do you have any social media presence accounts you'd like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram at Cambridge Road. Find us on Facebook also at Cambridge Road Vineyard.
Fantastic, guys! Follow Lance and Cambridge Road, and let him know that you heard him on the podcast. So, thanks again.
Thanks, mate. It's good to be here. Cheers.
Thank you very much, guys, for listening to another episode of the Vincast. I have been James Scaresbrook, also known as the Intrepid Wino, and of course, thanks to Lance for his time on the show. If you'd like to follow me on social media, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Intrepid Wino, and you can also find the podcast on Twitter at the Vincast. I have a YouTube channel, Intrepid Wino, where I regularly post videos tasting Australian wines called Let's Taste. So check out that and make sure you subscribe. And of course, as always, I'd love for you to subscribe to the podcast so that you can get the newest episode as soon as it becomes available. So you can find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Player FM, or any number of different podcast hosting apps. All that information is available at intrepidwino.com, and that's also where you'll find lots of different writings that I've done, because I actually started as a blogger, and I blogged about my journey traveling around the world, visiting wine regions. So come and visit me, get in touch. I'm thevincast@gmail.com if you'd like to get in contact with me. But until next time, bye.